My children put my name on a fancy senior waiting list. I used the time to handwrite my memoirs. The publisher's advance bought my silence. That's the story. Sounds simple, right? It wasn't. It was a war fought with baking soda, bridge club gossip, and a big pen. And I won. Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in Australia, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. It started with a betrayal. A quiet paperwork betrayal. The kind that doesn't shout, it just signs. My daughter, Karen, and my son, Brad, they signed my name. They put me on the waiting list for Shady Oaks Convalescent Campus. They said it was just a precaution. They said it was for the best. They said a lot of things while they were drinking my good tea and eating my lemon pound cake in my kitchen on Pinecrest Drive. But what they meant was, we've decided your life in this house is almost over. But see, they forgot who they were dealing with. I didn't survive 60 years of PTA meetings, 2 recessions, and the invention of the internet by being a pushover. So when they presented their plan with all the cheerful finality of a polished tombstone, I smiled, I nodded, and I started to write. The brochure for Shady Oaks was slick. It showed happy silver-haired people laughing on a putting green. It talked about community and security and peace of mind. For the kids' peace of mind, not mine. Brad, my engineer, laid out the timeline. The average wait is 18 to 24 months, Mom. It's perfect. No pressure. 24 months. 2 years. A ticking clock in a fancy font. I felt the walls of my own house, the house I'd painted and gardened and filled with 35 years of memories, start to inch closer. Karen, my practical, nervous Karen, started helping me declutter that very weekend. Every box she packed for Goodwill felt like a shovel full of dirt on my own grave. That night after they left, I didn't cry. I got angry. Then I got smart. They gave me a countdown. Fine, I would use it. In the back of my closet was an old, dusty box of college-ruled notebooks bought on sale for a project I'd never started. I pulled one out. On the first line, I wrote, Chapter 1. I was born during a blackout, and I've been causing them ever since. It wasn't a memoir, not yet. It was a grenade, and I was pulling the pin. I wrote about my mother, a woman who could stretch a single chicken into 3 meals and a hearty stock. I wrote about my father, who lost his job at the plant and spent a year in the basement building a perfect miniature model of our town out of matchsticks. I wrote about meeting Frank, my husband. Oh, Frank. I wrote about our first date at the drive-in, about his terrible, wonderful jokes, about the way he cried when Brad was born. I wrote about the cancer that took him, slow and then all at once. The words poured out. They were messy. They were true. The notebooks multiplied. 1 became 5. Stacked on my sewing table. Then 10, a leaning tower on the dining room hutch. Karen noticed. Writing recipes, Mom? She asked, her voice light but her eyes sharp. Something like that, I said, stirring a pot of soup. Just passing the time. But I wasn't just passing time. I was building a fortress out of paragraphs. Every memory I put down was a brick in a wall between me and Shady Oaks. I was remembering who I was before I was their mom. I was Alice. Alice, who once hitchhiked to a Bob Dylan concert. Alice who successfully sued a landlord for a broken heater. Alice who built a life. Then, about 8 months in, the call came. It was a perky voice from Shady Oaks. "Mrs. Gable, we have an unanticipated availability, a lovely garden view suite. We'd like to schedule a tour for you and your family next Thursday." The clock hadn't just ticked, it had gonged. My heart did a terrible cold flop. I looked at my pile of notebooks, 12 of them. My whole life was in there, but it wasn't a weapon yet. It was just a sad old lady's scribbles. I agreed to the tour. I hung up the phone, and I knew I had to change my plan. Writing my life wasn't enough. I had to sell it. I said yes to the tour, but my mind was already racing, faster than it had in years. A garden view suite. It sounded like a prison cell with a window box. I called Karen and Brad, my voice sweet as pie. "They have a spot next Thursday. Can you believe it?" I could hear their relieved smiles through the phone. They thought I was rolling over. They thought the battle was won. I spent the next 6 days not packing, but planning. I went to the local library, to the computer lab where teenagers played video games. I asked a bored-looking girl with blue hair how to find a literary agent. She showed me a website. It was a whole universe I never knew existed. Query letters, sample chapters, nonfiction proposals. I wrote it all down in a fresh notebook, labeling it Operation Memory. Thursday arrived. Brad picked me up in his pristine SUV. Karen met us there. Shady Oaks smelled like fake lavender and disinfectant. The carpet was too thick, meant to soften falls. Our guide, Chloe, was about 22 and chirpy. "This is our community hub. Bingo every Tuesday. Here's the medical wing. So convenient." I smiled and nodded. I asked gentle questions. "What's the policy on personal furniture? Like, say, a large writing desk?" Chloe said, "Oh, we provide lovely, safe built-ins." Safe, that word again. They kept my children behind me like handlers. I saw Karen's eyes get misty looking at a group doing chair yoga. She saw community. I saw a staged performance. The garden view suite was a beige rectangle. A single window looked onto a manicured lawn with a solitary, sad-looking birch tree. I could fit my bed and one small chair in here. Not my desk, not my books, not my life. In the car on the way home, Brad was upbeat. "It's really top-notch, Mom. So secure." Karen chimed in, "You wouldn't have to worry about anything. The kitchenette is so cute." I waited. I let the quiet stretch. Then I said softly, "Your father proposed to me under a birch tree. Did I ever tell you that?" I hadn't written that story yet. It was still mine, still inside. It was on a picnic. He'd carved our initials into it, AB plus FG. I saw Karen's face in the rearview mirror, a flicker of doubt, a crack in her certainty. "That tree on the lawn," I said, looking at the window. "It reminded me. I think I'd like to write that story down before anything changes." The car got quiet. I had planted a seed of guilt, a seed of memory. That night, I didn't write about Frank's proposal. I worked on my book proposal. I took the most explosive chapter, the one about the summer I worked at a casino in Reno before I was married, a secret I'd never told my kids. I typed it up, painfully slow, with 2 fingers on my old desktop computer. I wrote a cover letter. "I am a 78-year-old woman on the waiting list for a nursing home. My children think my story is over. I am writing to prove it is not." I sent it to 20 agents from the library list. Then I waited. The ticking clock got louder. Shady Oaks called again, wanting a deposit. I stalled. We're reviewing the finances, I told them. Brad and Karen started talking about an estate sale. To downsize, they said. Every visit was a scan of my rooms, an appraisal of my things. Then 3 weeks later, my inbox dinged. It was a reply. Subject line, your query. My hand shook. It was an agent named Cynthia. She wrote, Alice, this is extraordinary. Can we talk? Talking to Cynthia was like breathing oxygen for the first time in a year. Her voice was sharp, no-nonsense New York. It's visceral, Alice. The Ticino chapter, I felt the cigarette smoke in my hair. You have a voice, a real, raw, unbeatable voice. She talked about platforms and audiences. The sandwich generation will eat this up, but it's the rebellion, the quiet rebellion. That's what sells. She said she could sell it. She wanted to represent me. I sat in my kitchen, the cordless phone to my ear, watching a squirrel raid the bird feeder. A normal day. A day that was about to split my life in two. What do I need to do? I asked. Finish it, Cynthia said. Give me the whole, messy, beautiful thing, and let me handle the rest. Finish it. The clock was now a metronome, setting the pace for my typing. I wrote while my coffee got cold. I wrote instead of sleeping. I wrote about the hard things, the time I almost left Frank, the loneliness after he died, the secret credit card debt I hid from everyone. I poured every regret, every joy, every secret sin onto the page. The notebooks piled up like a barricade. Karen came over one Tuesday. She found me at the computer typing fiercely. Mom, you're going to ruin your eyes. What is all this? I minimized the screen, a reflex. Just letters, I said. Catching up with old friends. The lie felt sour in my mouth, but the truth was a weapon I wasn't ready to fire. We need to talk about the deposit for Shady Oaks, she said, sitting down with a sigh. Brad and I can cover it, but we need to move forward. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I'd sung to sleep, the woman who now saw me as a checklist item. Karen, I said, my voice calm, do you remember the summer you were 10 and you had that terrible fever? 104 degrees? She blinked, thrown. Vaguely. I stayed up for 3 nights. I put you in cool baths. I read you Charlotte's Web, cover to cover, twice. The doctor said just to keep doing what I was doing, that I had saved you from a seizure. I held her gaze. I'm not that person anymore, am I? To you, I'm just the person who might leave the stove on. Her face crumpled. Mom, that's not... It is, I said gently. But it's okay. I need a little more time to get my affairs in order, my real affairs. 3 months. Can you give me that? She relented. 3 months. A stay of execution. I used every second. I sent Cynthia the completed manuscript, all 15 notebooks, translated into a digital file. She called me excited. It's a masterpiece of memoir, raw, real, and completely marketable. We're going to auction it. Auction, like a piece of art. My life, going to the highest bidder. The waiting was a new kind of torture. Every ring of the phone was a potential heart attack. Brad called about power of attorney paperwork. Karen called about a wonderful mobility scooter she'd seen online. I deflected. I pretended to be forgetful. Oh, send me the link, dear. I'll look later. I was playing a part now, the slightly confused old mother. It was my camouflage. Cynthia called on a Tuesday morning. Alice, sit down. I was already sitting. We have 3 offers, strong ones. The winner is Pendleton Press. They're offering a 2-book deal. A 2-book deal? The words made no sense. 2 books, I croaked. I only have 1 life. She laughed. They want your next one, your What Happened After book.
But listen, the important number, the advance. She said the figure, it was more money than Frank had made in any 5 years of his life combined. The number hung in the air of my kitchen, between the cookie jar and the toaster, a surreal, shimmering ghost. I couldn't speak. "Alice, are you there?" "What do I have to do?" I whispered. "You sign the contract, you do some edits with their brilliant editor, you do a little publicity, maybe some interviews, and you get the first half of the money now.
The other half on publication. Money now. A lifeline, a weapon. And my children? I asked. The book has stories, private stories about them. Cynthia was quiet for a moment. That's the risk, Alice. That's the choice. You're telling your truth. They may not like it. The publicity will likely reach them. I looked out at my backyard, at Frank's resting barbecue, at the bird bath my grandkids had painted. I thought of the beige room at Shady Oaks. I thought of my name on a waiting list, a problem to be solved. "Send me the contract," I said. The packet arrived. It was thick, full of legalese. I signed it on my dining room table, the same table where I'd signed mortgage papers, where my kids had done homework. I used Frank's favorite pen. A week later, a wire transfer hit my bank account, the first half of the advance. I stared at the online banking screen for an hour. The number was real. It was power. I did something foolish then. I did something wonderful. I drove to the BMW dealership. I didn't buy a car. I just sat in a convertible, a red one, and smelled the new leather. I drove to a fancy steakhouse and ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, ate 2 bites, and took the rest home in a box. I felt like a ghost in my own life, a secret millionaire. But secrets don't last. I made my first mistake. Karen came over unexpectedly and saw the steakhouse box in my fridge. "Mom, since when do you go to Sterling's? That place is a fortune." "A friend treated me," I mumbled. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. The detective in her, the mother in her, was waking up. The game was getting harder. Karen started snooping. I'd find her glancing at my desk, now clear of notebooks. The notebooks were in a locked filing cabinet I'd bought with the advance. She'd run her finger over the desk, checking for dust, for clues. She asked casual questions. "How are you filling your days, Mom? You seem different." "I'm writing," I said. Finally, it was a partial truth, a test balloon. "Writing what?" Her voice was light, but her posture was tense. "Just my thoughts. For the family. A history." The lie was smoother this time. She didn't believe me. I saw it. A week later, Brad showed up with a tech upgrade, a new computer. "So we can video call easier, Mom," he said, bustling in. But his eyes were on my old desktop. He was an engineer. He could probably find files, track history. I let him install it. I smiled. I thanked him. The moment he left, I unplugged it. I went back to my old machine, which held my secret life. The edits from Pendleton Press arrived. My editor, a young man named Leo, was kind but fierce. He asked hard questions. "On page 204, you mention your daughter's eating disorder. Can we go deeper? What did that feel like for you, as her mother?" I had written about Karen's teenage struggle vaguely. Leo wanted the tears, the fights, the stolen food, the hospital visits. Writing it felt like a fresh betrayal, but it also felt like the truth, my truth, the truth of the scared, angry mother I had been. I wrote it. I sent it back. The pressure was a vice.
On one side, my children closing in. On the other, my publisher pulling me into the spotlight. And in the middle, Shady Oaks, with a suite still held in my name. The deposit was due. Karen and Brad scheduled a family finance meeting. They sat at my table. Brad had spreadsheets. Karen had a folder. I had a pot of tea and a heart pounding like a jackhammer. "We've crunched the numbers, Mom," Brad began. "The sale of this house, plus your Social Security and a little from the trust Dad left, cover Shady Oaks comfortably. We just need to sign the deposit papers and list the house." I poured the tea. My hand didn't shake. "I'm not going to Shady Oaks," I said. The silence was absolute. It was the first time I'd said it outright.
"Mom," Karen said, her voice pleading, "we've been over this. It's not safe." "I'm not going," I repeated. "I've made other arrangements." "What arrangements?" Brad's voice was harder. "You can't live alone forever. What if you fall?" I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment. "I won't be living alone. I'm going to be traveling for a while for my book." They stared at me. Confusion. Then dawning, horrible comprehension. "What book?" Karen asked, each word a chip of ice. "I wrote a memoir." The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. "It's being published by Pendleton Press. I've already received an advance." Brad laughed, a short, disbelieving bark. "Published? Mom, come on. What kind of scam is this? Did someone online?" "It's not a scam," I said, my voice steady. I got up, went to the locked filing cabinet, and spun the combination. I pulled out the publisher's contract. I laid the thick stack of papers on the table between the spreadsheets and the tea. I pointed to my signature, to the Pendleton Press logo, to the line that stated the advance amount. Karen's face went pale as she read the number. Brad snatched the contract, his engineer's eyes scanning the legalese. His expression moved from disbelief to shock, then to a slow, burning anger. "You wrote about us," Karen whispered. It wasn't a question. "I wrote about my life," I corrected softly, "which includes you. It includes everything, the good and the hard." "The hard?" Brad snapped, slapping the contract down. "What does that mean? What did you say about me? About my divorce? About my job?" He was panicking. I saw the fear in his eyes, the fear of being exposed, of being seen not as the successful son, but as a character in my story. It's my story to tell. But my defiance was wilting under their hurt. "This money, it means I can get help, a live-in aid. I can stay here, in my home." "With blood money," Karen spat. She was crying now. "You sold our private lives for a convertible and steak? Is that what this is?" That stung. It stung because it was partly true. "It's for my freedom," I said, my own eyes filling. "You were taking my freedom away. You were putting me in a beige box. What was I supposed to do?" "Talk to us," Brad shouted. "I wasn't listening," I shouted back. The room echoed. We were strangers, squared off across a battlefield of paperwork. They left that night in a fury. The silence they left behind was worse than any argument. It was a cold, final silence. I had chosen my story over my family. The victory tasted like ashes. The next morning, Cynthia called. "Alice, we have a problem. Pendleton's legal department received an email from a Bradley Gable. He's threatening to sue for invasion of privacy, defamation. He's demanding the manuscript." My heart stopped. My own son, lawyering up against me? Brad's threat wasn't empty. A formal letter arrived from a law firm, not his, but one he'd hired. It demanded I cease and desist from publishing any material that portrayed him or his sister in a false light or violated their reasonable expectation of privacy. It said they would seek an injunction. I was terrified. I called Cynthia. She was calm. "This happens, Alice. Not often, but it happens. They're trying to scare you. The truth is a defense against defamation, but false light and privacy, those are trickier. A court battle could delay publication for years. It would drain your advance in legal fees." A delay, draining the money. That was their strategy. They wouldn't win in the end, but they could bankrupt me in the process. They could run out the clock until Shady Oaks was my only option. It was brilliant. It was brutal. Leo, my editor, called. His voice was grave. "The publisher is concerned, Alice. A lawsuit, even a frivolous one, is a cloud over the book. Marketing doesn't like clouds." I felt the walls closing in again. My own children had found the kill switch. I had the money, but they had the law, and they had my heart. I couldn't fight them in court. I just couldn't. I spent a week in a paralysis of fear. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I invited them back over. No tea this time, just 3 chairs in the living room. They sat, stiff and hostile. "I got the letter from your lawyer," I said. "Then you know we're serious. Send the manuscript to our lawyer. Let him redact the invasive parts or kill the book. Return the advance." "I can't return it," I said. "I've spent some of it." Karen looked at the floor, disgusted. "I have a proposal," I said, my voice thin. "The second half of the advance. It's larger than the first. It comes when the book is published. I won't publish it." Brad's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'll stop. I'll tell the publisher I won't proceed, but in return, you let me keep the first half of the advance." "I use it to hire private care, to modify the house. I stay here. You take my name off the Shady Oaks list, and you leave me alone." The offer hung in the air. I was offering them my silence in exchange for my freedom. "How do we know you won't just publish it later?" Karen asked, her voice hollow. "We'll have a new legal agreement," Brad said, the engineer already building the trap. "A non-disclosure agreement. You agree never to publish the memoir or any related material. You return all copies of the manuscript to the publisher. We get confirmation. The remaining advance is forfeited. You violate it, we sue for everything, plus damages." It was a life sentence of silence. My story, the story I'd poured my soul into, locked in a vault forever. But my life, my home, would remain mine. I looked at my children's faces. They weren't seeing their mother. They were seeing a liability being contained, a problem being solved their way. "Okay," I whispered. The word was the end of a dream. The following month was a funeral for a book. I signed the brutal NDA. I called Cynthia and told her. She was furious, then heartbroken for me. "You're bullying you, Alice. We can fight this." "I'm tired of fighting," I said, and I meant it. I was so tired. I packed up the manuscript, the digital files, the printed copies, the precious notebooks. I put them in a box. A courier from Pendleton Press came to pick it up. I watched the young man carry the box away, my life in his hands. It felt like watching my own coffin go into the ground. Leo sent a final sad email. "You have a rare gift, Alice. I'm sorry the world won't get to hear your voice. Truly." The publisher formally canceled the contract. They clawed back the second half of the advance, but the first half was mine to keep. It was the silence money. Brad and Karen handled everything. They paid off Shady Oaks, getting my name removed from the list. They found a reputable agency for in-home aides. They set up a schedule. They were efficient. They were cold. The war was over, and a tense, bureaucratic peace settled over Pinecrest Drive. My aide, Maria, started coming 5 days a week. She was a kind woman in her 50s. She cooked, she cleaned, she drove me to the store. We didn't talk much. I was a job. My house was safe. I had won. So why did I feel so dead inside? I'd look at my empty desk. No notebooks. No mission. The ticking clock was gone, replaced by a vast, empty silence. I had bought my independence with my voice. It was a fair trade, the world would say, but it didn't feel fair. It felt like I'd cut out my own tongue. A year passed. The routines solidified. Maria, doctor's appointments, groceries. I played bridge with friends who cautiously asked about that book rumor. I'd smile and say, "Oh, it wasn't the right time." They'd nod, pity in their eyes. I was just Alice again, the grandma who almost wrote a book. Then, on a random Tuesday, my phone exploded. Texts from old friends, emails, even a voicemail from a reporter. "Alice, is it true?" "Alice, I just read the excerpt. Mrs. Gable, comment for the Tribune?" My blood ran cold. I turned on my computer with fumbling hands. I Googled my name. There it was, on the website of a major national magazine, an exclusive excerpt titled "The Waiting List, an unpublished Memoirs' most explosive chapter." It was the casino chapter, my Reno summer. The byline had a note, "From the suppressed memoir of Alice Gable." It was my words, my story, published for the world to see. I called Brad, my fingers trembling on the phone. He answered, his voice tense. "You see it," he said. It wasn't a question. "How?" I breathed. "I gave everything back." "The publisher," he seethed. "Someone at the press leaked it. They're calling it a taste of a lost work. They're framing it as a tragedy that the full book was silenced. They're making you a martyr and us the villains." The world tilted. The publisher. They'd kept a copy. Of course they had. They'd spent money on edits, on legal. They owned the rights to the unpublished work. The NDA stopped me, not them. They'd found a loophole. They'd waited a year for the dust to settle. Then they'd dropped a bomb. "What do we do?" I whispered. "Our lawyer is on it," Brad said, but he sounded defeated. "But the damage, Karen is hysterical. Her friends are reading about her mother as a blackjack dealer in 1965. The article mentions a difficult relationship with her adult children. It's all there between the lines." I hung up. I read the article. My words were alive. People in the comments were outraged for me. How dare her children silence her? This voice is a gift. I want to read the whole thing. I had wanted this so badly. But now, seeing it in the wild, used as a weapon against my kids, it felt dirty. It felt wrong.
The silence I'd bought was shattered, and I hadn't been the one to break it. The leak changed everything. It turned the private family conflict into public gossip. Karen showed up at my door, red-eyed. "Are you happy now?" she cried. "Everyone knows. Everyone pities me. They think I'm a monster." "I didn't do this, Karen. The publisher did." "But you gave them the ammunition," she screamed. It was the scream of a lifetime of hurt. "You always thought your story was more important than our feelings. Dad knew it. I know it." She slammed the door. I stood in the foyer, shattered. Brad was more calculating. He came over, stone-faced. "The lawyer says we could sue the publisher, but it would be long and ugly, and it would keep the story in the news." He looked at me, a stranger. "Or we do nothing. The news cycle will move on in a week. But our relationship, Mom, I don't know if that can be fixed." I had gotten what I wanted. My story was out, and it had destroyed the last fragile threads holding my family together. The price was too high. I realized in that moment that I didn't want the book if it meant losing them completely. Even like this, even angry and cold, they were my children. I made a decision. I called Cynthia. She'd moved on to other clients, but took my call. "Cynthia, the leak. Can you get me a contact, the highest person at Pendleton Press? I want to talk to them." She was surprised, but got me the number. I called the office of the publisher himself. I left a message. To my shock, he called back. His name was Robert. He sounded smooth, apologetic, but firm. "Alice, a terrible breach. We're investigating. But the response to the excerpt has been phenomenal. There's a real hunger for your full story." "There is no full story," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Not anymore. I'm calling to make a deal. You stop. You pull the excerpt. You issue a statement saying it was published in error. You promise never to publish another word." He was silent. Then, "And what do we get?" And I said,
You get to avoid a messy, public lawsuit with my family, which your lawyers will tell you might win, but the PR will be a nightmare. You look like bullies, silencing an old lady and then profiting from her. Not a good headline. I heard him breathing. I was playing a game I'd learned from him. "And," he prompted. "And," I said, "you get the ending." "The ending?" Robert asked. "The last chapter," I said. "The one I never wrote for the book. The one about what happened after. About the waiting list, the advance, the silence, about the leak. I will write it. One final chapter. You can publish it exclusively as a follow-up, a conclusion. It will get you even more clicks, but it ends there. That's the final word, forever." He thought about it. I could almost hear the calculations. A clean, definitive end to the saga, a moral to the story. Great PR. "You'll sign over rights to that single chapter?" "Yes." "And your family? They'll agree? They'll get a copy before it goes out. They can approve it. No surprises." He agreed. We had a deal. I called Brad and Karen. I told them the plan. You get to read the last chapter. You get to say if it's okay. They pull down the excerpt, and then it's really, finally, over. They were wary, exhausted, but they agreed. I sat down at my empty desk. I opened a new document. I titled it Chapter 16, The Price of Silence. I wrote it all, the fear, the betrayal, the loneliness of victory, the pain of the leak. I wrote about my love for them, which got tangled up in my need for myself. I didn't make myself a hero. I didn't make them villains. I made us all human, flawed, and broken by a system that thinks old people are problems to be stored away. I sent it to Karen and Brad. They came over. We read it together at the kitchen table, the three of us. They cried. I cried. For the first time in years, we weren't fighting. We were just sad, together, for what we'd lost. They approved it. One word change. I sent it to Robert. The magazine pulled the original excerpt. A week later, they published my final chapter. The headline read, "The author's final word. Why I traded my memoir for my home." The public ate it up. The story was complete. And then, as Brad predicted, the world moved on.
A new quiet descended. But this quiet was different. It wasn't the silence of a suppressed voice. It was the quiet after a storm. Damaged, but calm. Brad started coming over on Sundays to watch football. Not to talk, just to be. Karen began asking for recipes again, the old ones in my handwriting. It was fragile. It was a détente. We were relearning each other with scars. The advance money sat in the bank. I used it to fix the roof, to put in a walk-in shower, to pay Maria. The house was secure. I was secure. One afternoon, Karen was helping me sort photos. She held up one of me, young, standing by a beat-up car. "Is this the Reno summer?" she asked quietly. I nodded. It was. I was scared the whole time, but I felt free. She put the photo down. "I read the final chapter to my book club," she said, not looking at me. They understood. It made them think about their own mothers. That was all, but it was a crack of light, an acknowledgement. I realized the memoir had done its job, even unpublished. It forced the truth into the open. It broke the system of quiet assumptions and polite lies. The cost was nearly everything. But what was left was real. Last month, a package arrived, no return address. I opened it. Inside was a beautiful, leather-bound blank notebook and a note on Pendleton Press letterhead. "Alice, for the next story, or for grocery lists, whichever you choose. No contracts attached. E.M. Robert." I laughed. I cried. I put it on my desk. It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like an apology. It felt like a gift. That notebook is sitting there now. I haven't written in it. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll just let it be a thing of beauty on my desk, a reminder of the war and the peace. Maria asked me about it yesterday. "Nice book. You gonna fill it?" I looked at it. I thought of all the words locked away in some publisher's vault. I thought of the words in that final chapter floating in the digital world. I thought of the words left unsaid between me and my kids. Words we were now slowly, carefully trying to say. "I already have," I said. She looked confused, but smiled. And in a way, it was true. My story was told. Not the way I planned, but it was told. And I'm still here, in my house on Pinecrest Drive. The birds are at the feeder. The squirrel is plotting his next raid, and my name is not on any list. So that's it. That's the whole story. My children put my name on a fancy senior waiting list. I used the time to handwrite my memoirs. The publishers advance bought my silence. But life, like a good story, has loops. The silence got broken. The money bought my home. The memoir broke our family. And then, in a strange, broken way, it started to glue us back together. The victory isn't clean. It's messy. It's real. I don't know what your story is. Maybe you're a kid worrying about your parents. Maybe you're a parent feeling pushed aside. Maybe you're just someone who feels like your voice doesn't matter. Here's what I learned sitting at this desk, looking out this window. Your voice matters, but so do the people you love. The trick isn't choosing one over the other. The trick, the hard,
Lifelong work is finding a way to make them hear your voice without screaming, and to hear theirs in return. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you buy your silence, and sometimes it gets stolen from you. But you keep trying. You keep writing your story, even if the only one who ever reads it is you. They're coming for dinner tonight. Brad and Karen and the grandkids. We're having meatloaf. I'm making my apple pie. We probably won't talk about the book. We'll talk about school and sports and the weird noise Brad's car is making. It will be normal. It will be fragile. It will be everything I fought for. The waiting list was just a piece of paper. The memoir was just a stack of notebooks. The advance was just a number in a bank. This dinner, this noisy, messy, ordinary life in my own home, this is the real payoff. Thanks for listening. Now, go call your mother or your kid. Just call them.